Hey,
It's Wednesday night. We're here. We're shaking down
Wednesday
the
night.
house. Yeah. Well, it's the week after the week that everybody was waiting for, the blowdown from No Name Nationals. And what tonight's show is actually going to be a little bit different than that because it's something that Shane and I noticed at No Name Nationals, and we've been kind of kicking around this idea for about a whole week now. Um,
Yes.
and we're actually gonna bounce it off you guys and see what you think. But before we do that, I'm gonna run down the list of folks that are here. Thanks for stopping by and checking out the Wednesday night show again. Some of you might be regulars, some of you might be here for the first time, but hopefully we have some information that maybe will help you out in your I don't know, endeavor to build your whatever you're building. And but yeah, but without further ado, I guess we'll hit up the list of folks that are here. LP94 Lars is already here. Miss Cat G, Buff Del Campo, Bruce Cultgen, Dean Stevenson. Let's see. Fab Race Mod Repeat. Hello from Total Obscurity Racing Stables. Clayton's Toolbox. Buick Smith is here. Twisted Mopar Garage. NSB Custom Cars. Howdy, howdy. Let's see. Slant Daily Garage is in here. And mostly old parts and Russ Patrick. I'm here. Yes, you are. There's no place you'd rather be, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Aunt D, Bigfoots and Mopars, Mama M3, Buick 350 V8 Power. Happy to be here. Let's see. SSR Performance. What's up, everyone? And Dust Devil Garage. Howdy.
Hi,
Well,
everyone.
yeah, I'm glad we got quite a full house. It usually people usually trickle in once the live they get the notification that we're live on Wednesday. So and they just start trickling in. But oh yeah, see, just Rabbit Transit Garage just stopped in. But so back to what I was saying at the intro of the show.
Yeah.
Shane and I have been we noticed that the last No Name Nationals, there was a lot of essentially professional level 28-5 cars
Yeah.
there at the event. And we realized that, man, this thing is really, it wasn't meant to be like that. It was meant to be just YouTubers that had stuff that fit there. And like, if you really look at the first year,
Yeah.
um,
Like people who are in this chat, not one person who brings 5 or 6 people. Not talking bad about that. I'm just saying that it would be you guys who are part of the family, let's put so to speak.
and we started looking at, is it really relevant in today's no name nationals is the
It's
big
not.
question, right? So we started talking to each other about what could we replace it with. I mean, when we started doing match racing was going good. There was a lot of people on the fence line to check out the match races,
Yeah.
but what would be something that would be a little bit more permanent, I guess, is
Hmm.
the big one. Um, so we're going to throw around a couple of ideas that we
Yeah.
thought would be pretty neat for just about everyone. Um,
Yeah. We came up with a cubic inch type of deal. We Dallas calls it the crazy threes.
no, I thought it was wasn't it the, oh, I don't remember, Screaming Threes or the
Screaming
Super
threes
Threes,
or crazy or
right?
super threes, whatever. But so yeah, we came up with like so this way Mopar, Chevy, Ford, Buick, pretty much all the engines could be in the manufacturers could be in this. So it's 333 cubic inches, and how do we come to that? Well, 318 you bore to 4 inch with a standard stroke that comes out to 332. A Chevrolet, basically a 4 inch bore that you have to bore 30 over, and then with 327 crank comes out to 333 cubic inches. And then a Ford, you got a 331 Ford, and then you have like a 300 Buick, and so on and so forth, and then whatever. And we were trying to make a cubic inch limit, make it an NA type of deal, make it so that way it has to be a factory block, so no aftermarket race blocks or anything like that. Cylinder heads will have to be something over the counter, no race. So if your Mopar is an 18-degree valve angle, you got to run 18 degrees. So I can't run like the brand new Victors. I'd have to run like my Indies that I have. They're an 18 degree. Chevrolet 23 degree. I think Ford's 20 degree, isn't it?
I don't know. I
Yeah,
don't know what
I'm
it
not
is.
sure. And No sheet metal intakes, something that's over the counter. Now you can modify them on Portum and stuff, but it can't be a sheet metal intake. It's got to be carburetor.
And
Now,
hold on, before I guess I'll preface this. These are
yeah,
just ideas we're kicking around. None of
yes,
these are rules. None of this is set in
no,
stone. We're just the whole idea was you wanted to have a class
yeah,
that was cost effective. Just about anyone could participate, and then you'd have heads up racing just for that class,
yeah,
right? And
and
this is just
that's
an
kind of
idea we're kicking around. So
yeah, and that's why I'm glazing over this real quick. I mean, these aren't rules. I'm just kind of throwing this out there to see what you guys think because this way it levels the playing field so everybody can have fun, and everybody can race, and anybody in this chat could build something and come and race in a 281050 class. You don't have to have an exorbitant amount of money and nitrous and turbo and everything. You can run an LS with a carburetor. You can run a Gen 3 Hemi with a carburetor as long as it meets the rules. You could do whatever you like. No aluminum blocks, cast iron blocks, and we're going to do the 3,000 pound limit. So that way the car has to, with no super light cars, it's
yeah,
got to be
nope.
3,001 actually. So, and then you talk about the suspension thing you were kicking around too.
Well, I was looking at and say I see SSR performances. Let me know the rules and we will build something new. We don't think you should have to build something new is the thing. The whole idea was maybe
Put it in the
you could
car.
just you can use the Rusty Nova that you already have
Yeah.
and put a 327 in it or a 331 Chevrolet.
Yeah.
Because you guys already have a good set of heads. You already got a good intake manifold. You got a block. It's just as simple as putting a crank in it that, essentially allows you to meet the cubic inch. And then it's a heads up first to the finish line deal.
Yeah.
But what we were looking at was we wanted to keep it around 3,000 pounds. We wanted to have factory suspension pickup points. That way, nobody could back half the car. It isn't tube chassis. It is nothing like that. You want something that's virtually
A
like
car.
a car,
Yeah.
something like a street car that you literally just took off the street. You don't care about the windshield wipers and blinkers and all that stuff. And you just throw a 331 cubic inch engine in it.
Hmm.
The idea was for it to be cost effective and enjoyable. I'm sure, after the course of like 5-6 years, there's going to be the ringer setups in there. And then,
Yeah.
SR Performance is saying that the LS cars are going to kick everyone's butt. That's probably going to be the case. The other
You
thing
know
that
what?
we're looking at is the engine manufacturer has to meet the body manufacturer, right? So you can't
That's right.
swap an LS into a box body Mustang and just
That's
ring
right.
everybody out. Um, but we thought it would be kind of neat to do something like that, where you could literally do something that you already have and you
Hmm.
just build upon that. And then you build a small cubic inch engine, no power adders, no nitrous. It keeps the cost down. You run VP 110 race gas. It doesn't cost an arm and a leg. It's something that's very affordable. It's something that's very enjoyable. And it's something that you can build on your channel with virtually almost any car.
Yeah. So like my car, the Cookie Monster, I could build like say a 331, a 318, 40, 4-inch bore, stock stroke. Everything that I have on here, I would put on there. I'd make a cam for it. So and half you guys in this chat right now have a car that would work in that. You figure it's going to be right around 500 to 525 horse in that range, and that's going to put you right at like that 7.0 to 6 something, high sixes, and that it's not crazy fast, but it's fun, and you're going to be looking at the people as you're racing because it's going to be that close.
The reason why we were doing this was because one, let's say max effort 333 cubic inch engine, you might get 600 horse out of it.
Yeah.
You won't be running to where you got to have all the safety stuff. You don't have to have the licenses. You don't have to have the diaper and all that stuff. That all starts falling in place at like 640. So it was to keep it enjoyable and cost effective. And I think you could get quite a few cars in a short period of time. Miss Ketji saying I would put a Cleveland against any LS. We already talked about this. We've already
Yes.
determined that would be one of the ringers of the class.
Yeah.
You would have the Cleveland, you'd have your LS, like LS3 combination, you'd have Gen 3 Hemi, you'd have the Gen 1 Hemi, right?
Yeah. 331 Gen 1 Hemi. Yeah.
Yeah. And then that would be pretty much your ringer, right? Like here in the United States, and I don't know where everyone is from, but The Cleveland was pretty much outlawed in every freaking racing sanctioning body because it was just you couldn't compete with it
Hmm.
using a small block. I mean, it sure would be fun to try, but and maybe that's something that in a year or two we just throw a bunch of weight at the Cleveland and make it run with more weight. That's what they used to do in the old school racing days. Uh, let's see.
So SSR asked a question up here. He said, factory castings on heads and block. No, it just has to be a factory style block. The heads can be aftermarket, but it's got to be over the counter stuff. And if you run a Chevrolet, it's got to be a 23-degree valve angle. You cannot run like a 15 or a 13 or anything like that. So you got to pick your engine
And this year would
carefully.
be pretty liberal,
Yeah.
like if you show up with a set of 18-degree heads or something that you bought 10 years ago and you're using them, we're going to let it slide just for the sake of letting you run, right? But the whole idea is not to go out and spend a whole bunch of money
Yeah.
in re-engineer your entire combination. Uh,
Hmm.
Clayton's Toolbox says, I like the 333 cubic inch limit in a CFM limit on the carb.
No,
That probably would be, you know,
no, because tunnel rams. I want tunnel rams.
yeah,
That,
well,
that, that would be fun. I mean, I'm not going to have one because I'm going to have this, but it would be cool to see people out there with tunnel rams because that would be,
yeah.
it would just be like the
Well,
old racing, old
that's
superstock.
where we called it the Screaming Threes, right?
Yeah.
Because it was a 3,000 pound car, 333 cubic inch, and it'd
Mhm.
be kind of like the throwback to old modified stuff. I'm sure everybody would run an automatic because it's cheaper with a brake,
Mhm.
but the motor would wind hard. And that's what's neat and unique about the 333 cubic inch combo is generally you're looking at a 4-inch bore, maybe a little bit more, but a 4-inch bore with like a three what is it 325 stroke, 330 stroke, something like that,
Yeah.
and that would put you right at it, right? So it rev hard, and what it is bang for the buck. uh,
Mhm.
if you really sit down and do the math, those combinations right there garner you the most horsepower and the most torque for the least cubic inch, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
And then,
And and anyone can find a 318 if you're a Mopar guy. Anybody can find, a 302 Ford, make it a 331. Chevrolet's dime a dozen everywhere, and this just makes it more fun for everyone. And there's not does not have to be a flat top. It can be a roller. It can be anything. It just has to have a factory style block, a factory like cast iron block.
oh, looks like Mopar Al is here.
Huh.
Hey, Mopar Al, thanks for stopping by. uh the SR Performance, my dad would be all over this. This is in his wheelhouse. I just think
Perfect.
it'd be a lot of fun, and if
Mhm.
we get something together quick, we can announce it ASAP, and everybody can start doing their builds, and then
Yeah.
have it ready for next year,
Yeah.
right? But uh,
And
let's see, Dust Devil Garage would be more cost effective to stick with stock displacements. It may be more cost effective, but what you're going to find is this: everyone's going to cry.
yep.
Everyone's going to cry. The
Yeah.
Mopar will be a disadvantage. The Chevrolet would be a big advantage. The Ford with a Cleveland head on it would run everybody in the dick in the dirt, right?
Yeah. And that's why we picked the 333. It was strategic. It just wasn't a number. It actually made a couple morphs, but the 333 was actually strategically picked for a reason.
Uh, let's see. Tall Garage says he's jumped in here and said, "Gentlemen, the 300 I've been working on almost started. The starter mount I was using kept deflecting when the engine tried to fire. Anyone that would have a C4 or manual bell housing for a 164 tooth." Oh man, I'm sorry. I got rid of all that stuff
Hmm.
years ago. I sold it at swap meet in San Diego. Matter of fact.
Yeah. As you're going through, I'm reading the chats. It seems like a lot of people are kind of into this.
It does seem that way. SSR
Mhm.
Performance says LS3 is too big. Yes, it is too big. But if you did a 6 liter block with a 4.8 liter crank, you come out to about 327 cubes. You
Mhm.
bore 30 over, you're right there. And then you could run your LS3 heads on that LS6 block. Cleveland motor, sure, but they made a Boss 302 that you could build a 331 Boss 302. It's virtually the same thing, except for it just winds harder. Um,
Andy, we're talking about the screaming threes right now about that 333 class. Me and Dallas were kicking around.
Let's see. Clayton's Toolbox was saying that factory crank would be a good idea. Yeah, but then you're going to end up screwing a lot of people.
Yeah.
Is the problem, because Chevrolets came with steel cranks, right? Mopars came with steel cranks. Ford, if you can find a steel crank for 302 Boss 302 or even a 289 crank,
Mm-hmm.
you could make something work. But they're few and far between for everyone else. Is the big thing, and you want to be able to see the neat thing about the 333. Oldsmobile has a 330 cubic inch engine.
Yeah.
Right. Pontiac 326. Real easy to build a 333 cubic inch engine in almost any make or model. And that's what was interesting about it, was like, hey, what's really neat about the whole thing is, if you think about it, AMC would be probably the one to run, okay? Because you could dip it to the Mopar stuff, you can dip it to GM stuff. You could really mix and match a bunch of stuff to make it work for you.
But one more thing too is that you got to run the engine in the car that you have. So the engine has to meet the manufacturer, the same manufacturer as the vehicle. So if a Dart has to have a Dodge engine. If you're running a Mustang, it would have to be a Ford engine. You run an LS, it has to be a Chevrolet of some sort. So,
all right, Buick Smith is saying, how about a carb stock suspension 3,000 pound pre 79 engine class?
Limit too many people with that.
Yeah, I think you're gonna narrow it down so much you wouldn't have any. What we were looking at was, if you noticed how quick the 28-10-5 guys jumped in this year, because they came and there's money. That's why they show up, right? Because there's a payout, and they were more willing to essentially just create a YouTube channel, get their 500 subs, and then participate. And so we started thinking, like, man, this class is kind of the same way. We're not trying to alienate anyone, but what it is there's a ton of these cars out there, especially, like, if you think about it right now, Fox body Fords, 331, all you need is the crank, and you just take a 302 and make a 331. It's that simple. But there would be quite a few cars that already exist. And if you actually had a class that had, let's say, 20 cars in it, all of them heads up, all of them high wind and screaming burnout machines, it would be an interesting idea, right? It's kind of like a throwback, like I said, to modified days, but it's not so much modified. SSR Performance is asking power adder. No, we're just going to go all motor in this deal, and that way it keeps the cost down, and you can run the same engine for a long time. That's the idea. Let's see, LS3 is an alloy block. Would have to go to 4. Yes, or you can use a 6-liter cast iron block with a 4.8 crank, and it, like I said, it brings you right up to that 330 cubic inch markish. So,
but you couldn't put that in a Ford. That's the thing.
yes, NSB Custom Cars, a Gen 3 Hemi is 345 cubic inches.
That's correct.
But you offset run the crank, and when you de-stroke a crank,
Mm-hmm.
all the oiling holes and everything still line up, because you're not touching that side of the crank. So you just pull some stroke out of that thing and bring it down to essentially a 331, 335 stroke.
Yeah.
And then that would get you 330 cubic inch. And I don't think it would really take much on a Gen 3 Hemi, because if you went to a Chevrolet style rod, to a 2100
rod,
or a 2-inch journal rod for a Chevrolet, you could offset grind that crank and have your D-stroke motor like in minutes.
In fact, the 68 Dart that's sitting right up there on that rack, I've got a 6.1 Hemi sitting right underneath it for that. Never know. Might be in this class. Who knows?
Let's see. SSR Performance says, man, I think it's a great idea. We still bring Rusty Nova to Grudge Race. That's fine. I'm probably going to bring my T-Bird. I don't know if I'll have anything ready. I don't even know if I'm going to have a home in 6 months. So
I'm going to start right now. If this, I mean, just to build a 318 would be fun, and I would put all this stuff that's on this car on that, except for the nitrous. And this car weighs right at 3140. Take all the nitrous stuff off, I'd be right at 3,000 pounds.
Rabbit Transit Garage says, better hurry. I was going to give my roller 318 away. Well, weren't you guys talking about doing you were talking about doing a poly? I think you should do the poly for this one. But that's just me. That's just my take on that. Use the poly head. Let's see. Miss Angie says, shame I live 15,000 miles away. Hey, jump on a plane, fly up here where I'm at. I'll give you the address. You crash here a couple days before the event, and you can go along with. It's not a
Yeah,
big deal.
I'm telling you, it's worth the drive. Just come out. It's an event. It's like peace, love, and racing. It's awesome. It's like Woodstock for car people.
Let's see. Clayton's toolbox is 3,000 pounds the minimum weight. My Pinto with a 302 stroker is 2,600 pounds. Well, that's what we were trying to do, is keep it around 3,000 pounds.
Hmm.
But that's 3,000 pounds going down the track, right?
That's
So if you're
whichever.
2,600 pounds bear and you're probably 200-pound man, you only need to add about 200 pounds of weight to it.
Hmm. And
So,
and what we'll do is we'll just weigh them after the race. I've got a set of scales. Dallas has got a set of scales. And obviously we're not going to go crazy on this. We're going to put you in the car. We'll weigh you, and obviously we're going to know. I mean, you can tell. We've been doing this a long time. Same with Dallas. We'll know if someone's cheating, but I don't think anyone's really going to do that. This is more for fun.
all right. So mostly on parts and rust. So 3,910 stroke. I'm assuming that's bore. 345 stroke would be legal. No, we're talking stock 318 crankshaft stroke, which I think is 331. And then what you do is you bore that block to like a 4-inch bore.
Yeah, 4-inch bore.
Let's see. Andy's saying, "Oh, we're talking 3-on-3." Yeah, we were talking the screaming threes or the super threes or something. I was thinking we're trying to come up with something that'd be interesting, but it would be a heck of a lot of fun to watch because the cars would be relatively close if they all weighed the same and they all relatively made about the same power. It would really, really be fun to watch, and
Yeah,
it'd really be fun to participate.
and it would just be a pro tree, and then a green light. There'd be no times up there, but it would literally be side by side racing.
Yeah. So Andy says I'm down for it. I think it would be good. It would be good.
That means I got two 318s to build because I got his right here.
Dakota says, "Yeah, I'll build a Pontiac 326. Just take a 455 and put a 326 sticker on it." Well, you can do that, but you're going to get pumped. So I don't know if you
Oh,
know
that's
what
right.
P&G is. Um,
You got a pumper. You got a pump thing.
I have a P&G. I bought it for when we were doing modified production for AHRA, the Nostalgia Modified class, and you're going to get pumped. And if it pumps big, you're hitting the bricks, buddy. Then you just jump into some match racing with somebody, and your 326 stickers will get blown off.
But you still got to cut a light. That you saw how close some of those races were, and these guys beat me by half a second, and he barely beat me by this much because it was all on the tree. And same with Dallas. Dallas, that guy had Dallas covered by a full second, but he was so far out on that guy, he was just lost. It wasn't until the very end he came around Dallas. So I mean, believe me, there's a lot to be lost right at the tree.
You know what's sad is I could actually hear that car coming. That's how loud it was. Like how much
Me
power.
too. That guy with those zoomies on it, it was
Oh yeah,
shaking everything.
yeah, the blower.
Yeah, believe
So
me.
Crash's classic car is saying engine must have a distributor. Well, I don't know if it has to have a distributor. I mean, I guess that's a rule that you could throw out there, but there's ways to work around that. I mean, they make a timing cover for an LS to put a
Yeah,
distributor in it.
I,
Same thing
you-
for 3 Hemi. You can put a distributor mounted belt driven.
but here's the thing: is that I think that would make it. I don't know. I like I said, like with the monkey bike, let's just throw it out there. Let's see what sticks, see what the ringers become, and then we make the rules around that. Just kind of see how it goes.
Let's see. Dust Devil saying I would just build a 318 and give up the 15 cubes. You can, but you're going to need all them 15 cubes, I'm
You
sure.
want the bore for the
Yeah.
you want the bore for the head flow because you're going to be turning this 7,000 RPM plus. I would build it just like this thing here. I turned this one to about 75, 7,800, and it's a small block Mopar. So I will tell you everything that I'm doing on mine. I'm not going to pull any punches. In fact, I'm going to film everything I'm going to do to Andy's 318 and then my 318. So I'll show you all the concrete. I'll show you all the oiling mods. I'll show you how I'm distributing the oil from front to back, crossovers, everything, drain back holes. So people can do the exact same thing I'm doing. I'm not gonna hide something. It's not like here's a secret with a sheet over it. I'm gonna show you guys. That's the whole point of this thing. And then that way someone can look at what I did, and then if they improve upon it, hey, right on, have at it.
Let's see. Rules regarding fuel lines to carb steel required. A CPE hose with AN fittings, NHRA legal caveats. I don't know what a CPE hose is. Do you know what that is, Shane?
That's a new one for me. I don't know.
I wonder if that's a braided stainless steel line. Braided stainless steel lines are acceptable.
Yeah,
You know,
that's what I have on everything here.
And
it just can't be rubber hose.
It just can't be the parts store 3/8 rubber line. That's the big thing. They try to stay away from, because it'll rub a hole through it. Is the thing, right? Like you can literally rub a hole through it, and that's what they're trying to keep away from.
SSR performance. The thing is, you're right. Honestly, a stock 5.0 10-speed Mustang would be hard to beat with simple bolt-ons. Correct, but it's got to have a carburetor. That's the key. Got to have a carburetor.
Yeah, we're trying to keep it relatively cost effective, right? Plus, it eliminates all that wizardry with the Coyote that could actually just come in, and because the Coyote, let's face it, the Coyote makes as much power as my Cleaver and my T-Bird.
Yeah,
I mean, yeah.
And someone wrote, does it have to be a pushrod engine? As of right now, yeah, it's got to be a pushrod engine for this.
We haven't really refined anything. It's just something we're kicking around, right? Guys, don't freaking burn us at the stake here.
Yeah, right. We're just throwing this out there to see if
days of just making some spitball ideas and throwing it together and see what would happen.
Yeah,
we just wanted to be able to get all the manufacturers in there at a certain reasonable cubic inch that wasn't super duper expensive.
This way anybody can get, because just by seeing the chat, well, how lit up it is, everybody seems to be interested in this, and anybody can compete in this. Because if you've got a car that runs, let's just say 740 or to 7.0, and you have just a 6-point cage in it, you can build this and race against me, Dallas, or anyone in this chat and be competitive, because we're all going to be on the same level playing field.
So SSR performances, I like the class. I feel like you capped it. If you capped it at 350 or 351, you'd have double the cars. We would. The problem would be you start running down into the safety stuff.
Well, then Chrysler, because
360, right?
Yeah. So then it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. Yeah.
But what we decided to do was just look at the safety, where the safety limits started really becoming effective. And we're like, okay, let's keep it behind all the safety rules, right? But you gotta have maybe a roll bar, a fire jacket, and a helmet. You know, and that's about the extent of it. You start going 640s, you guys know this. You're gonna have to have licenses and chassis certs and the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, this way it makes it cheaper, and it's a competitive thing. And then, I agree with you that the 350 and the 351 would be fun. But then you have the Chrysler, and even if you did 360. You can't find a 360 unless you had 30 you bore it 30 over. So then you bore it 30 over, then you have 370 cubic inches, and then it just keeps growing. So this way it's all on the smaller engines. And then this also too gives you a chance, because you have smaller bearings on a lot of these 327s, the 318s, the 3 and the 30 and the Fords. Yeah, they're all small. So these are all high winding. These things want to be wound up, so it's much easier, and it's less.
The good thing is you can find good cranks for them that are factory.
That's right.
That was the other thing, was like you could build something that was pretty robust for not a lot of money. I mean, think about it. Your neighbor that you used to build 327 Chevrolets is probably now building 408s, right? That's what everybody's building: 406, 408, 440, cubic inch small blocks, if they're still messing with small blocks.
Yeah.
You show up in there and you get the 327 crank just laying there. No one's going to use that. And you say, hey, man, $100? Yeah, sure. Now, what I do know is that Scat had a clearance sale on these, because they don't even sell them anymore, because everybody wants the stroker stuff. Everybody wants the 4-inch stroke stuff. The problem with the 4-inch stroke stuff, you're going to be running 640s. You're going to need all the safety crap. And that's not what this whole thing was about. It was virtually about, you could build something pretty hot. If you wanted to drive it to the track, the idea that I liked was most of these cars are streetable enough that you could technically just take it over to Lambert's and it's not a problem.
And that's the thing, is your car has to be driven on the street to Lambert's. That was one more right here on the thing, is that it has to be part of the thing. To be in this, it has to be able to be driven to Lambert's and back, whether it's street legal or not.
Wouldn't a 6-liter with a 4.8 crank be a 5.5 liter? What's that in cubic inch? I don't know in liters. You're talking something that I don't understand.
What just if you tell me the bore and the stroke and you know
The 6-liter is a 4-inch bore, and I don't know what the stroke is. I'll look real quick.
if you give me the bald eagles number,
4.8.
so it's a 4. It's what's the bore on it?
The bore on the 6-liter block is 4-inch.
4-inch. Okay, so 4 divided by 2 square times pi times 8, and then tell me the stroke, and I'll tell you what it is.
I'm looking it up right now.
3 point something.
3.267. So it would come out to 327 cubic inches, which is
327.7 exactly. There you go. That's exactly what it'd be. Can you see that right there? 327. So, yep, that would work.
Let's see. Yes, but it's just a matter of a crankshaft. Not many people really build 327 Chevys, but a lot of people have 350s. Yes, but it's just the crankshaft.
It's just the crankshaft, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the only difference. I think the 327 isn't a 4-inch bore with just a different crank. I believe so, right?
Let's see. Yes. Yep. Mostly all parts and rust is 390 bore, 3910 bore, and 345 works. Talk to text isn't working, and it may work. You're going to get a whole plethora of combinations. Solve this bore and stroke combination, right?
Yeah.
Idea was to keep it less than 333 cubes. The 3.910 bore you're going to find is going to limit you on airflow so bad that you're going to want the bigger bore and the shorter stroke.
What was I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it real quick. So I'll tell you what that is. What's his bore?
3.910.
And his stroke is 345. That comes out to 331.3. So that'd be perfect.
D150. Are you willing to take someone's engine apart? What about strokers? We're just going to pump them. If it pumps big, you're out, right? And you're just going to randomly pump the engines. Now, and that's what makes it fair. I'm not going to take somebody's engine apart. We're not going to do teardowns like NHRA. Most of it's kind of on the honor system. We're just going to pump it. If it pumps good, you're in, right? Simple, easy.
And this is for fun. So if you have to cheat to have fun, what's the point?
Yeah, that's a good question. Oh, okay. So yes, braided steel hose is CPE. So yeah, that's acceptable.
Yeah.
Let's see.
I've never heard that before. That's a first for me, honestly.
I missed the early bits. What are the rules? We're not really throwing. These is something that we've just been kicking around the idea of.
Yeah.
We're not making anything mandated yet. But as that's our performance is. I'd just say no LS motors, honestly. I don't know if you could do that.
No. I was thinking about that too. Make it like an older style thing, but LS is it came out in the 90s, so technically it's 30 years old. It came out 95, didn't it come out? Is that when it first started? 95, 96?
Yeah.
So
it would have been 96 in the vet.
Yeah, so I mean it's close to 30 years old, so technically it's an old engine. So yeah, I'd say it works. Hemi came out in 2005. That's 20 years old. Sure, I would say they all work.
Let's see. Buick Smith says 400 cubic inch small block Chevy with 283 crank is 321 cubes. Yes, it is.
Yep.
The 283 crank is a small journal, and that 400 is a big journal.
So you're going to have a problem with bearing spacers.
Yeah, you're going to need custom bearing spacers and probably caps to make that work. But you're more than welcome to. I mean, it's however you want to skin the cat. I'm not going to tell you how to skin it, right? Let's see. Dan's Garage. Okay. Can you explain pumping? Okay.
Perfect. Good.
Yeah. All right. So they're way back in the 70s. There was this piece of equipment that was used called a P&G. Um, that's how they used to pump the engines at the national events to verify cubic inch because they were all weight to cubic inch limited, right?
Mhm.
Um, what it is it is just a volume meter that you hook up to the spark plug hole. You pull the rock arms off and you spin the engine over, and it pumps a volume, and that volume fills up the volume meter, and it tells you how many cubic inch in a graduated cylinder the engine is.
Mhm.
So you pump it because you're turning the engine over with the starter.
Yeah.
Let's see.
SSR Performance is saying that the small block came out 55 in 55, just hard to compete against 15-degree heads with old school stuff. You're absolutely right. But here's the thing though, is that you if you have an LS, you can't run a canted valve type of deal because the LS, like say a 5.3, is a wedge head type of deal. So you're not gonna, it's got to be a cathedral port or something. It can't be like the canted valve at all. So that's where it limits it. Yeah, you're right. It's 15-degree, but there's only so much head flow and that you can use at that cubic inch, and there's only so much RPM. Personally, if I had the choice between in the Chevrolet land, I would pick an older Chevrolet over the LS for this competition because there's much more parts for the RPM range for the small block Chevrolet than there is for the LS, in my opinion. I think it would just be easier and cheaper to do it the small block Chevrolet way.
Yeah, but I mean, you could do it with an LS.
Yeah, you could absolutely.
Okay. I hate saying this I don't know how many times I've said this. The LS is just a copy of the small block Buick, the 300. It's actually a copy of a 3800 V6 in a V8 form. But the V6 is a cop or is six of the eight cylinders of a 300. All Buicks had 15-degree heads way back all the way to 1964, right? Once they went away from the nail head, the small blocks got the 15-degree heads or got the 15-degree valves and the heads. And then in 1967, the big block Buick came out with a 15-degree head, right? Um, the only reason the LS runs good is because it took all the stage 2 V6 Buick technology and applied it to a V8. And that's it. That's all. There's nothing magic about it. You could put those Buick heads. They made Buick heads that bolt on a small block Chevrolet
Yep.
in the 90s to run in like comp eliminator and stuff.
Yep, they sure
And,
did. It's just Buick right on them.
but it was a Chevrolet. And then, so the Chevrolet guys didn't want them because they're a Buick head. And the Buick guys didn't want them because it's a Chevrolet block. And it was kind of just dumb. But it worked. It ran good. It's a 15-degree head. Yeah, I don't think you should be afraid of any of them because there's kind of options out there for just about everything, honestly.
Yeah. And they all have pros and cons to them.
They do. You know? The LS, okay, the cons for the LS. You want to know the cons for the LS? There's a lot. There's actually a few cons for the LS. One, they're not good at oiling. They just they do have an improved oiling system like the series, like it's like the Series 2 V6 Buick.
Yeah.
With the pump in front, but it draws oil from the rear of the sump all the way to the front of the pump and then pumps from the front back, right? So it doesn't really, well, there's that thumb again.
Yeah.
It doesn't really work well. Also, you have that tube that you're limited to. It has to fit inside the oil pan. It has to fit. Like you can only put so much tube in there for oil. The Buick is the same way. The small block is the same way. The tube is actually not. It doesn't even have a tube. It's in the block, and you can only get that hole so big until it has more holes. So let's see. Rita Rez Schmidt says, "Have you considered time bracket racing?" We have bracket racing.
Yeah, we have bracket racing, but this is for a heads up. We wanted a heads up class that everybody could participate in.
Let's see. Danny Boyd says, "Aren't Pontiacs 14-degree?" They may be. Pontiacs do run good. Matter of fact, they used to have a 350 called the Ramrod 350 that was a freaking monster. But it was only available. Was that Oldsmobile?
I thought it was. No, I thought they had the stage. Wasn't the stage 5 Pontiac or stage 3 Pontiac or something like that?
No, those are aftermarket heads.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they had the Ram Air 3.
Ram Air, that's what it was. Yeah, the Ram Air. Yeah.
I thought Pontiac had the Ramrod 350, but I could be wrong. Could be Oldsmobile had the Ramrod 350, but that
Yeah.
sucker was fast, man.
Yeah. It was, yeah. Danny Boyd said it was
Yes.
old.
Oh, it was Oldsmobile. Yeah, that's right. Okay. So,
Dust Devil Garage, no ladder bars. Basically, if the car came with leaf springs, it has to have a leaf spring style suspension. Whatever the car came with, that's what it has to have. So,
yeah.
like on my car, on the Cookie Monster, and it had leaf springs, so I have Caltrax, which is a leaf spring style suspension. You can't convert it to like a 4-link or anything like that, and no back halves or anything like that. So that way, it makes it cheaper and easier. You're not having a tube chassis car with a body set on top of this. These are real cars, and we are also kicking around as far as like it's got to be like all steel, all glass, no Lexan, the standard street car stuff, fiberglass bumpers and doors, but everything else steel, glass.
This Kenji says no YouTube channel needed. No, you still have to have a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
But we were just trying to come up with an idea for a heads-up class that would essentially just be fun. And it would be like real racer class. It's all about skill
Yeah.
and not money. I'm sure eventually it'll get to money, but see, with the small cubic inch, it's hard to just like, you're going to be within 20, 30 horsepower of each other. Each engine is.
Yeah. Andy, no dry sumps. It's got to have an oil pump in the pan, or like the factory place. It can't have a dry sump. No dry sumps. That was one of my things I had here for oiling.
Yeah, Andy's saying this will make folks think outside the box. They may, it may take off. I don't know. This is just something that we were kicking around, and I thought it'd be really interesting to, Shane and I were talking about it, like, hey, let's throw it to our audience on Wednesday night and see what they say, if anybody would be interested in it.
Yeah,
this would be a class that. Let's see. Okay. No trans brakes and line locks.
No, you got to be able to do a burnout without burning up the brakes. That's a safety thing. You get those rear brakes too hot at the end of the track, it sucks to stop. Believe me, I've already been there.
I don't know why the no trans brake. See, I don't run a trans brake in my T-Bird. Reason why I did that is trans brake shocks the drivetrain just like a stick car when you dump the clutch.
Yeah,
and it's hard on parts. So I didn't want to tear stuff up. I was trying to make it as long as I could without replacing crap. Now I'm just to the point where it's like that thing's eating C4s like a licorice whip. So
I'm in favor of having.
Yes, you can have Caltrax. Okay, so suspension, we were talking about suspension, factory suspension pickup points is kind of what we were looking at, where it's like if you have, let's say you have leaf spring car, because we're talking Caltrax here. You can have any bolt-on suspension components that you want, as long as the original suspension is still used in the car, right? You can put a
leaf spring car, yeah,
right. You can't take the leaf spring out, put a ladder bar in it, put coilovers on it. That's what we're trying to keep away from. Is it's easy to spend a bunch of money on that stuff, just so you can have the edge, right? But each car has its own benefits, its own downfalls. Each engine combination has its own benefits and downfalls. I really, really don't think the LS is going to be able to manhandle somebody with a Cleveland. I don't think so.
My personal think, I think the Gen 1 Hemi or the Gen 3 Hemi would be the ringer, is my opinion. I think the 331, if someone showed up with a 331 with the industrial heads, obviously that thing's a chunk of steel. It's heavy, but if it was put right, that would be the one.
And Patrick's saying here, 5.7 Hemi or 6.1 crank D-stroke 2009 up heads would be killer.
It's too big though, because
if you D-stroke to 5.7 and use the 2009 up heads, that would be a contender in that class.
Yeah, I would want the 6.1 block, because it's got a bigger bore, and then I would make a D-stroke from that. So that way the heads, because that's exactly what I have sitting right here, is I have Eagle heads 6.1 with a steel crank, but I would D-stroke it so that way it would make it 333 with those Frankenstein ported heads. So, and they flow like 390 CFM. So yes, I agree. That would be the
So,
absolute. That would be the hardest one to beat, in my opinion. Would be a Gen 3 Hemi set up with 333. That would
okay,
be.
so Buick's been saying, how about a DOT only tire? Shane and I have actually talked about this. I don't know where we're going to go with that. The first year is going to be pretty much open. If you want to run an ET street style tire, um, we're just going to say take anything that's what is it, 295 and smaller radial, and
28 10 50.
28-10-5 and smaller slick.
Yeah.
And that way you didn't have to go out and buy new tires. That's another added cost, right?
Yeah.
So the
You
idea was,
can you can buy takeoffs. People sell their 28 1050s. All those guys who are like grudge racers, you can buy them on marketplace. They've got 10 laps on them, and those super soft tires for like $200. I've actually bought a set of them a few times because they're cheaper. They're half the cost of buying new tires, and those guys, they have no problem spending $700 for 10 laps on tires.
yeah. The other thing is like what you find is in your DOT drag radials, they're generally heavier than a drag slick because the drag slick is still bias ply and it's a thin
Yeah.
sidewall, real thin.
And it's only eighth miles, so you're not going to really get a lot of the benefit at this power level from a radial,
Yeah.
because it's all about the launch. And then if this was a quarter mile, then yeah, you'd want to look at maybe getting a radial tire. But for this type of thing, it's all going to be about launch and putting it all to the ground with a lot of gear and a lot of RPM.
So that was kind of what we were kicking around, that idea. Um, it wasn't going to be super duper strict, like no rev limiters and stuff like that, but it was more or less to be fun, enjoyable, and keep the cost kind of under control. And you can have fun doing some heads up racing with a car that's not probably going to be much different than what you have.
Yeah. So like Patrick, I was talking to Patrick. I was texting Patrick today, and I was telling him, "Hey, you should really watch your Tech Talk because I got something you might be interested in." Because he was talking about 318s. This is something that's right up his alley because I know he's like a turbo guy, but he's got his car. It's all set up. He got on the side, could build a 318, throw in his car just for this, and then go and race. Brian at Dust Devil, he could probably do the exact same thing. I mean, there's, right down the list, all these cars that I know that could build this engine at this combination, put it in the car, and then be competitive.
Okay. What about people who work at tire plants and request a custom compound from Damien? So I'm assuming Damien works at a tire plant. I seriously doubt that you're going to get a better compound than what's already on the tires available.
Yeah, the 201050, the Hoosier already has the CO5, and they came out with a CO7. Then they have the DO5. The DO5 is a super soft compound, just came out. Then the Mickey Thompsons come at the 201050 in two compounds, soft and hard. So, and that the soft is super soft, like it's like this far from being like gum. So, but they're only good for like 10 laps, and that's that.
Dustin will send you lost me at 10.5-inch tire. Well, I'm sorry, buddy.
Yeah,
It's got to be, not everybody is going to have 1432s on their car.
right.
Yeah. Let's see. All right. Well, I guess we'll get on to our regular Tech Talk scheduled program this evening then.
Yeah.
Since it's kind of died down here, we had a lot of questions and stuff like that, but it's something that we were really kicking around. Thought it would be a real racers class that we could put together, and it would be enjoyable and fun, and it wouldn't be, I don't know if it would. I don't think it would actually get out of hand really fast.
No, it would take some years, but basically this is for you guys, so that way everybody can compete at the upper level on a Saturday with a 201050 with everybody. You can compete against, like I said, Dallas, me, Barkley probably build one. Whoever will build one, and you'll be there right there in the mix.
So Clayton's Toolbox says, to be a competitor, the engine would have to rev high. To build an engine that would rev to 8,000 RPM safely takes big bucks. A CFM limit would keep the RPMs down. You know what? A CFM limit would keep the RPMs down, but so would a rev limiter. We just put a rev limiter on and say, all right, it's 7,000 RPM or 6,700, and then that's it. That's all you got, and that would keep the RPMs down as well. I don't know how well it would go, but I mean, CFM limits is what it's going to do is going to hinder some combinations. That's the problem.
Yes, Hemis want the RPM. The LSs don't. So that's why I didn't really think about a rev limit. And you're right. Yeah, it is big bucks to go to 8,000 RPM. You're correct, but nothing is super inexpensive. But people have been making 8,000 RPM Chevrolets for a very long time. In fact, NASCAR had stock Chevrolet blocks running to 8,000, 8,500 for a very long time with wet sump oiling pans. So it can be done. It can be done.
All right. So Nick the Van Man says, I came in late. I'm late coming in. Can you briefly revisit the class you speak as far as the basics? Sounds like something I'd be interested in.
See?
We're coming up with an idea for maybe a true heads up class at No Name Nationals that it wouldn't really be John's thing. It would be my thing. But it was we were calling it like just have the spitball on some ideas like the super threes or the screaming threes, but it's 333 cubic inch and 3,000 pounds. And then pretty much that's what you have.
Yeah.
You can build anything up to 333 cubic inch and 3,000 pounds.
Yeah. With a 28 1050 tire, just your standard stuff.
Yeah, or
that's
less.
basic. Yeah. Or less.
Yeah. And then it's got to be factory car with factory suspension pickup points, right? You can't show up with, I don't know, fully fiberglass car unless it's fully fiberglass, like a Ved.
Yeah, but then it's got to weigh 3,000 pounds.
Yeah, so that's where you're at. So it'd be best to do like a Ranger or an S10 or something like that. Would probably fit in that class quite well.
Mhm.
To be honest with you.
But you'd still have to run the Caltrax then because it's a leaf spring truck.
Yeah, and you'd have to have leaf springs on it. You couldn't ladder bar it, and you can't back half it.
Yeah,
It's gonna be factory suspension pickup points. All right. Or what?
our blast, or is it ballast?
He's probably asking about ballast. Or ballast to meet weight. Yes, because you're still
Absolutely.
taking the same amount of weight down the track.
Because we weigh it after the race. That's the whole thing.
Let's see, cleaver powered lightweight Galaxy clone. Man, if you can get that sucker down to 3,000 pounds, that would be quite the accomplishment in itself.
Yeah, right. Read the one right below it.
Yeah, that's Nick the Van Man. It sounds like the event for a Buick G body wagon with a 300-inch Buick in it. Yes, it would be pretty good. With bitch. I just don't know if the 300 Buick would make the kind of power to run in this class. So, that's the only downside.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'll have a new video coming out here pretty soon, man. I'm working on something really cool, and I've been kind of I've alluded to it. I think I've said it a couple of times on here, but
Yeah, I have a picture. Can I show a picture, or no?
Sure, go ahead. Yeah.
All right. Which one do you want? I'll do the first one right here. So yeah, there you go. Going full John Wilburn. There you go. Look at that.
Oh man, yeah, that's something that you don't normally see in my garage. That's a Chevrolet.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But if you notice, it's got some pop-uppity pistons in it.
Yeah, that's why I was trying to zoom in. But look again. See if you can notice that. Look at those uppity pistons right there. Can you see it?
Yeah, but you can also see the roller cam block and all that stuff. So this is what I'm calling the Easy 302. This is a 4.3 liter L99 Chevrolet baby LT1 crank in a one-piece rear main seal 350 block. And
if you look carefully, those pop-ups cast a shadow.
Yeah, dude, they got some serious dome on them.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you look at the top of the piston, there's a groove notched in it, so you can get the plug in there.
Yeah,
it's
pretty cool, man. I zoomed in on them earlier and looked at the flame. Here we go. Actually, yeah, here we go. I zoomed in on it. There you go.
It's terrible, isn't it?
There you go. Look at that.
It's milled off the top just so the piston or the flame can travel.
Yeah.
It's gosh, dude, them things are popped up.
I was looking at it earlier going, wow.
Yeah. So Nick the Van Man says engine progress feels good, don't it? I stayed late and finished mine up. Weight lifted off my shoulders. Yeah, that it gets old when you get kind of in the same routine, and it's like the same thing over and over and over, and you're not getting anywhere, and it's setting you back, and uh, so we'll see.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll have a new video coming out with that. And the reason why I'm doing this is like I haven't given up on any Buick stuff, so don't worry about that. If you're waiting for Buick content, I just did this because 15 years ago, I guess it probably was 2010, so 14 years ago, I saw a 4.3 liter in the junkyard, and it was the V8. And I went home and I'm like, man, I never even knew they made that thing. So I started Googling it and looking at the main journal size and all that. And I'm like, my God, this will fit in a freaking one piece rear main seal block, right? Any of them. So I'm
Hmm.
like, man, it'd be easy to score a 4-bolt main 350 Chevy block, one piece rear main seal out of a truck, out of like a 3/4 ton truck. Well, life got in the way and everything else was happening. And I was on sea duty in the Navy. And I mean, I was never home. So it just kind of got put on the back burner. And then I guess probably like 4 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, um, what's his name? Richard Holdner built a DZ302 and put it on YouTube, and he dynoed it to find out what the legit numbers were on it. And he alluded to the fact that he could build one for an LT1 or LT4 DZ302 kind of knockoff, right? And I'm like, gosh, he's going to figure it out that he can put it in just a regular 350 block. And so I'm like, man, I need to do that before anybody else figures it out. Right. And so, and then maybe 3 years ago, Two Hacks Jeff, I gave him the idea of doing it, and he sourced up the crank and he got a block, and then he kind of just gave up on the project. So I just picked it up from him and ran with it. And then, so now I'm just going to finish it up. But yeah, I gave him the idea because I thought it was an interesting idea, and I knew I was never going to get to it. Everything kept getting in the way.
Yeah. I did have a tech question. Someone texted me one real quick. So it was about is there anything in there that am I stepping on anything
No,
is there nothing check? Someone asked me why did I put my um, accumulator back on my car. He saw the video I posted last weekend. And why did I take it off to begin with? Is this oil pan? I had a Milodon pan on there that was in the center. It was a center sump type of deal, and it was much deeper and wider. This is a different style of pan. This actually has a pickup off the oil pump, so it's literally in the back, and the pan does not hang down. So it's a much shallower pan, but it's longer. So it's a center and a rear sump all in one, and it does have trap doors in there, but it doesn't have a swinging pickup because the pickup is about this big. It's a 3/4 inch that comes right off the pump straight down. So it has a rear pickup like a small block Chevrolet does. I didn't think it was going to be much of an issue because of how much oil was in there. But now that I'm cresting that with 120 mark and stopping at some of these tracks, like when I was at Jackson, it was not an issue, but at Sykeston and at Holly Springs, there was a few times where I was racing and I was hitting the brakes, watching the oil pump as it would drip, it dipped down, and then I would put it neutral and shut the engine off, but it was still kind of turning over the engine, and then I would have to turn the corner, start it back up, and come back. And I had an accumulator, and I had it sitting here. I just took it off, and I never installed it. But I always wanted to move it because where it was at was right next to the shifter, and I just didn't like it. So I put it back in there, and the only thing I never installed it before, I just had it on a valve. But this time I installed a solenoid on it. So if it gets below 25 pounds, it turns on and it pumps the oil in there. So that's the reason why I put it in. Was that reason? I mean, if I didn't say that in my video, I apologize. Yeah.
all right. Well, let's see. Nick the Van Man says I was asked what building engines is like. I replied, lay $6,000 cash on the garage floor and let it sit there for 6 months while you eat Vienna sausages.
Yep.
Yeah, it's pretty rough. Especially now. You used to be able to get away with building them for about $2,000, right? Now it's like, I bet 4 to 6. If you have a shop do it, it's probably even more than that. And it depends on how much machine work you do anymore. I try to stay away from all the machine work because the problem is with the machine work, when you take it to the machine shop, one, you're paying the machine shop flat rate labor rates, right? And
Mm-hmm.
nothing's cheap with labor these days. Everybody's got to eat. The other thing is there's so many less machine shops that the stuff just sits for months and months and months. So not only are you paying some exorbitant price compared to what it was 10 years ago, um, and I'm not beating them guys at all. I'm beating them up at all. My pay didn't adjust to that. And so, and then it just sits there for your 1 month project turned into a 6 month project or a 9 month project.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, then you have the money to sit there on the garage floor eating Vienna sausages, waiting for it to come back, right? So you can finish it up. But let's see here. All right, Clayton's Toolbox says, does a normal 14-inch air cleaner that is exposed to the outside of the car cause any issues with the carb? Or is it better covered or in a tunnel ram type arrangement? No, it doesn't really cause any problems whatsoever outside the car. You can get, if you get a paper element wet,
It does suck.
they won't flow any water or any air because the water's pretty much taking up all the holes.
That's right. They'll shut it off.
Yeah, it'll actually, if you start the car up and you get it running and you rev it up, it'll suck that air filter in.
Yeah, or if it doesn't suck it in, it'll start blowing black smoke. And I know that because that's what happened to the beaver. Believe me, yeah.
Let's see.
Oh.
Campbell says, question, Kim tore down a slant. The short block appears to be a fresh build, 40 over. The bores have hone marks. The bores are 0.5 over 40 thousandths, and the pistons are 1,000 under. Too tight?
That's a little tight. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, it depends on the piston manufacturer, but that sounds too tight. I believe.
No, because it's based on bore size, right?
Yeah.
Didn't Slant have a real small bore?
Yeah, it's 340. So that would be 3.440. So that's 1.5. That might be okay if it's a Speed Pro piston.
Yeah, if it's a hypertectic, the hypertectics don't grow at all.
Yeah, as long as it's not
you
a
get it
forged
real
piston.
tight. If it's a cast piston, you're gonna have cast piston. You're actually probably gonna be okay.
Yeah, cast piston and a hypertectic will be fine. It's a forged piston, but I think I set mine up. I have my build sheets right over here, so I'll answer it. I just can't remember off the top of my head, but I think that's a little tight for a forge, but I think that might be okay for a Speed Pro because I think that's what I run as the Speed Pros in these things.
A hypertectic piston does not grow hardly at all. You run the skirt tolerances on them is like 2,000ths.
Yeah, on a 4-inch bore. Yeah,
right. On that small bore, that 3.4-inch bore,
you might be right. Yeah, it might be okay.
I think you might be okay. That's not too bad.
Buff, what I'll do is I'll text you after this. I'll look at I've every Slant 6 I built in there, and I have the what it was, so and I'll tell you what I got out of them. And is this a driver
book too?
What's that?
Don't you have the Mopar book that tells you what all the tolerances are?
Yes, but I also have the ones like if it's a street car, like I set them up differently for the green car than I do for like a high performance one or one that's going to get mileage. I set them up slightly different because I'll keep honing them out till I get a number. I just can't remember those things anymore. I just write them down now, so I don't have to remember them.
Okay, Clayton's Toolbox says, are the Halo style girls for the main caps worthwhile? Some say they do nothing. You know what? That's because some say I always hate the theys or the some says, right? Because most of the time, those people are talking out their ass. Yeah. That was the only way to do 90% of the blocks in the 1970s and 80s.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have aftermarket blocks with robust mains and stuff like that. This is what they made to make it work, was the Halo girdle. And the Halo girdle, if it ties into your pan rails, is pretty damn strong.
No, what he's talking about, I think, is he's talking about the Halo girdles, the one that it doesn't tie in. It's so like on a small block Chevrolet and a small block Mopar,
just across the two across the two
bolts,
studs, right?
But it ties them all together. So really, what it does is it doesn't make it stronger. What you're helping is at high RPM, You're helping the catwalk or the actual movement because you're tying one stud to the next. So what you're doing is you're just helping the flex of the bolt and by tying it in, and you're going to be putting one nut on top of another. I've built a lot of engines with those with the small block Mopar. Not on this one. This one's got mounted on caps, but I used to put those on the on my recipe engines once they got close to 500 horse and they were going up close over that 6,500. Is the closer they got to the 7,000 mark, I would use those if people didn't want to put on the mounted on caps. There's one more thing too, is that if you could find a way to run a halo cap where you actually bolted them down to the cap, so it would do the stud plus like say two 5/16 bolts into the cap, that would actually make it better because it's using the stud which moves to tie into it, but you're tying all of them together. So I believe they do work. They're not going to make them stronger from like blowing out like this. They're going to make them stronger from cap locking this way, and this way. They're not going to make them, any stronger this way because that's the thin piece. So
cap lock is the big one.
That cap lock's the big one. And once again, 500 RPM, 500 horsepower, sorry, 7,000 RPM. Once you get over that 7,000 mark, all bets are off on a lot of these things. I would just use to those numbers. You'll be fine. They do work to a point.
Yeah, and for us in this community where 2-bolt main is all you got,
it works.
Yeah, that's all you got. I mean, it works good.
Yeah.
If you ever saw the video I did with my super stock 350 Buick, 2-bolt mains, and then I have essentially a 1-inch piece of billet steel that ties the two studs together on top of the cap. Right. So, I mean, because they don't make a halo for a 350 Buick. They used to make a girdle that was an oil pan.
Yeah.
But that company went out of business a few years ago, 2005, I think. So.
Oh, good. I know the answer to this one. Go ahead.
Okay. Nick the Van Man says, tech question. Should I expect a lot of valve train noise with my 351? I'm using Lenati retrofit hydraulic roller link bar lifters and a Lenati hydraulic roller. Some say these lifters are loud.
Anytime you're going to run a link bar lifter, it's going to make noise. If you just take the link bars in your hand and move them up and down, because remember, they're going to be kind of doing this number, right? So there's going to come a point where they're going to be clicking because it's going to be getting longer and shorter and they're going to be bouncing. There's going to be one that's going to slide. What you're hearing is the link bar. It's not the lifter. It's literally the link bar that's moving back and forth. That's the reason why aftermarkets, they would use a dog bone. So that way the lifter slid on it. They weren't moving. So they were quiet. That's what you're hearing. It's not the lifter itself. Well, unfortunately, yeah, go ahead.
I had my 94 Ford had link bar lifters in it because when I broke my roller cam block, I ended up going to a block I had that was a non-roller, and I put the link bar lifters in it, and they were noisy. And it was actually just one of them that was really bad. I would assume it was number one because it's what it sounded like, but I couldn't guarantee it. But what I did find was there is a drastic difference between, like say a 40 weight oil versus a 30 weight oil.
Yeah.
So if you run like a 1030, it's fine. There's also there was a cheater workaround on the Morel lifters that were noisy like that, and you put a groove in the upper band.
Yeah, it puts more oil up. Yeah.
Yep. That way it allowed more oil to get to the lifter quickly. Or I think it was lower band. You put a lower band.
Yeah. Yeah, and also too, if you're running a wedge style block where the lifters are in, there's something to be said on too where the slider's at, because one of them is going to be a pivot, the other one is going to actually have a slider in there. So depending on if the slider is on the exhaust side, that's going to move up and then come down and come down. So if it's on the intake side, sometimes it goes up, and that's when you're going to hear the click. Now, it's made noise both ways, and so I'm not saying one way's better than the other, but I have noticed that if it's closer to like a rail, it does want to vibrate and make noise through the China wall, it does make more noise that way. So that's what you're hearing is that link bar. In fact, on this car here, it's got slide link bars on it, and they're actually the Crower lifters in this one, and it's extremely noisy. It sounds like the lifters are the valve train's bad, but it's not. It literally is the link bar making all that racket.
That's funny.
Yeah,
It
it is racket.
$1,200 set of lifters. But I guess when you're talking about full race stuff, okay, so there's like things are broken into a bunch of different categories. When you're talking like major auto manufacturers, there's one called NVH, right? Noise, vibration, and harshness.
Yep.
Right. They have people that's their sole purpose in life at the like a say General Motors headquarters,
Mm-hmm.
right? Is NVH, and they will sacrifice power or longevity for NVH.
That's right.
Race car is like the opposite of that, like so the opposite of it.
No one cares.
Zero cares about NVH, period.
Yep.
So I just think it's pretty interesting that what you find is important in, I guess when my car was new, that was a big deal. I mean, it was a Thunderbird. It was a nice high-end performance luxury car. And you didn't want any NVH. I did take like hundreds of pounds of sound deadener out of it. But Val 360 Jimmy says, "Hey guys, just joined the chat. Always makes me smile when I see Dallas wearing an Aussie t-shirt." Hey man, I went to Bathurst in 2009. So that's where I got this shirt at.
Dude, lucky dog. I've always wanted to go to Australia and see some of those, racing. That's actually what I watch. That's actually what's on the screen right now. Wait, after this, I'm going to watch some of that.
NBA supercars?
Oh yeah, I love that.
I love that too. I lived there for 3 years in Sydney. So but while I was there, I went to Bathurst once. Just like I'd like to get back down there and go to New Zealand and in Invercargill on our United States Thanksgiving weekend, they have a motorcycle race on the beach in commemoration of Burt Munro. And I thought it would be really bitching to fly down there to New Zealand, rent a motorcycle, and go enter that race. I don't care if I win or lose. It's just one of those bucket list things that would be badass, right?
Yeah.
That you could say you did it and everybody would be like, man, that's
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Let's see. Tall Garage is asking Shane the new DLC lifters out yet? Oh, you don't know?
No comment.
Okay. Let's see. Clayton's Toolbox, 26 by 10.5 versus 28 by 10.5. Would the 20-inch tire have much better traction, or is it just a small amount? No, it's a lot.
It's a lot because it's rollout. You want traction this way going forward rather than this way. So even a 30-inch, even if it's a 9-inch tire, is better than the 28-10-50 just because the tire is longer. When you have a longer patch, just like say a track, a track tire, like a tank, that they actually works better because it's longer and it's rollout. It's proven. And if you look at a lot of the Baja vehicles, they go for taller and thinner than they do shorter and wider for that exact reason, because the traction's that much better.
Yeah, the footprint is considerably bigger. Like,
yes,
you can go an inch wider on the tire width wise, and you're only gaining essentially whatever that the contact patch is plus that inch, right? But when you do an inch in diameter,
it makes it
gain like 2 inches on each side
footprint. Yeah,
it's lengthwise.
And then that's also too your traction point, because you're trying to push it, with the forces going this way, you're trying to push it this way, which is the long way, rather than this way, which is easier to scrub.
Let's see. Buick Smith is saying, Dallas, did you mention that one time a nailhead crank will fit into a big block Buick? Maybe that was somebody else. No, that was me. You can put a nailhead crank in a big block Buick, and I've been wanting to do it forever. The only difference is the main bearings are a different size. You will need a bearing spacer, a custom-made bearing spacer, to make it work. Kenny Bell did this back in the 70s or early 80s, where they actually put one of those cranks in a big block Buick. The reason why I wanted to do it is every nailhead crank is steel.
Hmm.
They all have a 3.64-inch stroke. Well, not all of them. There's a couple of different strokes out there, but I was looking after this 3.64-inch stroke, put it into 400 Buick block, and then I would have a big block Buick that was 364 cubic inch and would fit in almost any class racing, cubic inch limited. And then the neat thing is, like, it's a 4040 bore, so you can use the good like Edelbrock makes a head. You cannot put a stage 1 or stage 2 head on that thing because the bore is so small. But the Edelbrock head fits on the 400, and it will run a circle around a stock Buick 455 head. So here we go. Miss Cat G saying, I got a quote from DLC solid flat tappet lifters that were considerably more than a solid roller lifter. No shit.
Yeah, because they weren't from us. Ours are not going to be much more expensive than regular lifters. I don't remember the exact cost. I don't remember any of that stuff, but it was very reasonable, and that was the whole point of it.
Well, that's literally just a coating of carbon, right?
Mhm.
So it can't be too bad. I mean, it's just carbon impregnated steel. So
Yeah, exactly.
all right. Okay, well, other than that, though, I mean, we don't really have much going on in the chat.
Yeah.
Did you have any hardcore tech planned?
No, I really thought we were going to be talking about more of the racing more.
Yeah,
Really.
well, I figured it would burn out pretty quick. But
Really? I
yeah.
thought we were going to release a firestorm, because when we talked about the monkey bike rules, man, it was 2 hours like that of rules and this and that, and like, can I do this? Can I do that? So,
Nick the Van Man says, "Is DLC going to be what saves the flat tappet cam market?"
yes,
That's
100%.
what. That's what comp cams would like to think.
In fact, I know it, because then you don't have to have a cast iron core. You can have a billet core, and so that means that you don't have to have a cast iron core for, like, say you want a 108, and then you want to try a 114 lobe separation angle. Well, in a cast iron core, you're going to have a whole different core. It's not just a new cam; it's a whole core. So you have to have cores that have the hard coating. So you're going to have 9 different cores to make whatever duration at 50, lobe separation angle, and lift. We can do these now all on round lobes. So basically, a billet core, we can cut whatever you want onto it, any firing order you want, and then run the DLC coated lifters on that core, and then literally they'll just last forever. And it's really NASCAR. NASCAR was doing this back in the 90s, but it was just out of price for everyone. So we've been trying to bring it down to a cost-effective level for everyone, but it's going to save the flat topper market. So that way, engines like a Buick that has got this funky gear on the front of it, you get one that has a bolt on, and then you make all the cams, that out of a round lobe core, and then just have the gear bolted onto the front of it. So
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
So it's definitely going to save it.
Miss Kedji saying, if they are not too much, would they cause wear from the coating? The coating, no.
Mm-mm. Coating doesn't wear at all. In fact, it's going to wear out the cam before the lifters.
Yeah. So I've had DLC's been around for a long time. Okay, I'm just
Yes.
going to let you guys know this. This isn't something new.
No.
I had in my race car, as I said, a DLC coated wrist pins.
Mine does too.
Yeah, from like 2003 in NASCAR.
16. Yeah.
And so and you've seen them before, I'm sure, and you just didn't notice what it was. It's like a wrist pin. It's black. It'll be black in color, but it's carbon impregnated. And what happens is, when it starts to gall, when it starts to get hot, it releases some of that carbon, and the carbon lubricates the hot spot. And it's impregnated in the steel, so it doesn't even really have to gall. It just starts to get warm and opens up the pores and releases the carbon.
Mm-hmm.
And they did that in NASCAR to keep from wrist pin failures at high RPM, right? Well, somebody figured out this is not all that expensive, because you're literally just taking a high tool steel piece of metal, and you're negatively charging it, and then you're impregnating it with carbon in the pores. So, but I mean, I'm sure the equipment, when it, just like, the first computer that came out, NASA had it. It took up like a whole entire freaking barn. Um, Now we're all using one in essentially the palm of our hand or at home. It'll take some time for the technology to just refine, refine, refine. People will come up with better, cheaper, faster, and the price will come plummeting on it. But
Yeah.
right now, what Shane is telling you is that Cams is the one trying to plummet the price by
Yes.
refining the product so they can bring it to you at a reasonable price.
Yeah, because just like Miss Kaji was saying, is that normally this was $1,000 set of lifters, and the only people that were running these were circle track guys. They were running these super polished lifters, and then they were DLC coding them, so they could run these crazy cam lobes because they had a lift rule, like say 410 lift, but they would run 268 degrees of duration. So the cam lobe literally didn't look like a lobe. It looked like a plateau. It would come up, it would flat, then it would go down. So the only way to make a camshaft live for that weekend was to have them DLC coated. And then so they were doing that, and they were just basically changing camshafts. And so they didn't have to break in cams. So that was the whole point of it.
And we'll get to that too, because there's a question about that. Fab race
Oh,
model pieces. I could think of three different engine combinations that would work in that 3x3 class that you don't see every day.
perfect. Bring them
Yeah,
on.
that's exactly what it's supposed to help you. Like, think outside the box, have some fun, right?
And have some fun with it, man. And that's the whole idea, is that, you know, just think outside the box, have some fun,
Yeah. Buick Smith says, are aluminum intakes and heads allowed for the 333 class? Yes.
Mhm. Yep.
Yep.
As long as they're not sheet metal intakes, it's got cast intake. You can port them, but it's just got to be cast intake. And the aluminum heads have to be the same valve angle as what the factory is. That's it.
Clayton's Toolbox says, when figuring out optimal gearing for drag racing, should you be at peak horsepower at the finish line or be past peak horsepower?
Past.
You want probably 1 to 200 RPM past.
Yes, because you want to be on the backside of the parabolic, so that way if you're at peak, say your peak is 6,000, let's just say arbitrarily, it's 500 horsepower, and then like say at 58, you're at say 480, you're still at 480 on the other side. So as you're coming up and on the other side, you're still at that 480 mark. So if you were coming up to it, then you're at 460, 480, then 500. But if you're
leaving some on the table.
Yeah, you're 40, 480, 500, 480. So you basically is always better to shift about 200 past. So that way you're in the peak parabolic, because then you have the most area under the curve as you go from shift up, back over shift. It's not so you're coming up and then dipping back down. The whole idea is to come straight across. So you're at the peak and the highest amount. So
Nick the Van Man says, how does the DLC lifter affect or change break-in, oil type? I'm a flat tap it guy. I just run roller out of fear, but I prefer flat tap it.
Okay. So we're going to tell everyone to break them in like you normally will, but we've done it now. This is how we've tested it. We've done everything the absolute worst that you could ever do. We basically just put them in their startup and drive the car. No failures. So there was some failures that we found that were just like, as far as ramp rates, there's a few things that you got to be careful of, because the footprint on, like say, an 821 lifter is going to be like 790. So because it's going to have a little taper on it. But when you buy the lifters, if you're telling them, hey, I'm going to run DLC coded, they'll tell you exactly which cams to go. You don't want to be super overly aggressive on an 821 or 820 style lifter, or 841, because you're going to have like a 790, footprint because of the taper on that. So yeah, when you buy them, they'll know. I mean, basically everybody's been is up, and we're already selling them right now for the small block Chevrolets. So
yeah, and you guys are supposed to do what, Fords next, and then Mopars?
I just no comment.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Well, I
just
just know that they are coming.
They are
right?
coming.
But the
Yes.
Chevrolet was the one that was tested first.
Yes.
So let's see. Shane, can the DLC lifters be used on a used cam then?
No, because the whole idea of a camshaft on regular break-in is you're transferring metal from one to the next. So you're taking the lifter, and the lifter is basically polishing itself to the camshaft. So you're transferring material. That's why you nitride them, and you have all the, all the different coatings on them. And so you'll see a wear pattern on them. With this one, you're not going to have that at all. So you can take your used camshaft, and then you can have it, say, reground with the exact same profile, and then put it back on there, and it'll run just fine.
All right, Tall Grush says, well, you know what? That's pretty cool because you can actually save a lot of cams that way. Just what do you guys call it? Dust it?
Yeah.
Just put you just run it around and resurface the outside.
Yeah, you just dust it. Exactly. You just put your 1.5 taper back into it, clean it up so that way the marks are gone, and then that way it just runs like that. And as far as you don't have to run high zinc or anything like that, you could just run regular oils and stuff.
Even synthetics. Yep. So Tall Garage, mine Gen 1 Hemi has DLC wrist pins, old NASCAR stock. That used to be the ticket. And it still for me is the go-to real cheap ticket. If you want stuff like this that's really hard to come by in the regular guy world, you can't even buy it from Summit, right? But the NASCAR teams go through this stuff like nothing, right? I mean, they're just dumping this stuff. They blow the motors up every week and put a whole new one together. You buy them off of eBay, and what you do is okay, I was telling Shane about rods. Okay, you want some NASCAR connecting rods? Go on eBay, type in 6.300 rod. Okay, that is 6.3 inch rod, connecting rod. It'll primarily just pull up NASCAR rods at that length, right? And there'll be probably 20 of them on there that you could buy a set. Just find the set that hasn't been ran. It's usually double the price of everything else, but you're only looking at $300-400 for a set of super high-end, expensive rods that I could never afford if I bought them out of my own pocket for my own purpose. But you can get the DLC wrist pins for that stuff. They're all over eBay.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. Miss Katji says, I like flat solids. They're like mild rollers. Yes, I like flat solid because the lifter's so light.
Mm-hmm.
The
inexpensive.
Yeah.
And you don't have to have the spring pressures. You don't have to have any of that stuff. You're not having big, heavy stuff. And it's cost effective. So you're normally, $1,500 for a set of lifters and a camshaft. This is like $300 or $400 for a cam. It's back to the third the cost type stuff. So it definitely is worth it. If it's something that's done in time, I'll definitely run it in my 318 for if we do this crazy 3 or triple 3 class or whatever we want to call it.
Yeah, well, it was a screaming threes or I don't know. I don't know what to even call it. It's just all of it's just spitballing, right? Yeah. But I think it would be something that's fun.
Mm-hmm.
Fabrice Monrepeat says, Shane, would the DLC coating preclude the need for a bronze lifter bushing in an aluminum block? Probably not.
No, because it's going to go. The aluminum is too soft. You're going to still need that bronze bushing in there. Because the DLC coating is just the face. It's not the whole lifter. It's just the face of it.
It's just like, think of it like a hardening on steel. It's the same kind of thing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Dust Devil Garage, is it like the coatings on drills, on drill bits, I'm assuming? I think the drill bit is like just surface coated, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just, well, this is surface coated,
similar, but it's not. I don't think it's liquid and they dip it in. Yeah, this is like
I'm not familiar with the coatings on the drills. Really, I'm not. I see them on those. I get those cheap drill bits too, and they got the little, it's all carbide. It's whatever it is coated. You know what I mean?
Let's see. Fabrice Monrepeat. What about dizzy gears on billet cams? I don't think that DLC is going to help that. That's a wear factor, right? Mm-hmm. Like serious wear, and it's not a lubrication issue. It's just wear.
Yeah.
Let's see. Val 360 Jimmy says, is it an overly expensive process to DLC coat the lifters Would I be worth coating the cam lobes too?
No, because it's going to flake. You're going to have an edge. See, that's the problem, is that because it's so thin of a coating, that's why the footprint is so imperative where it is actually coated and where it's up. But when you're doing it on the camshaft literally is a square edge. So if you're DLC coating this surface here, this surface is not. It's going to flake right here. So you would have to curve this down, and then if you cut, put this chamfer on here, now you've lost some of the cam lobe. So you want as big a footprint as you can on the cam, and it's just not worth it. You got to have something that's a sacrificial lamb. Cam is much cheaper, so that's why if you go with, like, say, when I say sacrificial lamb, it's not going to destroy it. But what I'm getting at is that if something were to go wrong, it's going to be on the cam, and the cam can be reground cheaper than you can buy new lifters. So, and then each time you do the camshaft, you're going to have a DLC code to see the lifters are just, it's a dumb animal at that point. Yes, parkerization would be fine. Yeah.
I was just going to read that off. So,
I'm sorry.
Cam grinder parkerizes my cams after he regrinds them. Will DLC be okay with that?
Yes, be totally fine on that. Parkerization is absolutely one of the best things to do too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be fine.
Well, we're an hour and a half in here, and it seems to be moving pretty slow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised. But any questions out there? Shane and I will have to start talking about eating carne asada burritos and street racing in Southern California again.
Right.
Or we can just hang up our hats and call her a minute or an hour. We're just calling 30 minutes shy. But yeah, well, it was definitely good seeing everybody again. We don't.
Yeah. But, think about it. Get with us next week. What you guys thought about what we talked about. If you guys would want to participate in something like that, if that's something that you're interested in. And we just don't want to make a class and then, everybody hate it. Just, say, all right, if you're really seriously wanting to do this, then tell us, let us know. We will make it happen because we think it would be fun for everyone. That's just our opinion. Oh, there we go. What's the next one? I'm using.
Okay, so Clayton's Toolbox says, I'm using Lexington windows on a new build. The doors have been gutted. Is there any way to get them to open? I've seen some guys with pull-up straps, but never seen the details. Actually, I'll tell you exactly where to go look at this. All right. What is it? LO23?
Yep.
Darts. Okay. Yep. And the Barracuda, which is the BO23. Is that right?
Yep.
Man, I'm becoming a Mopar guy.
Right.
Go look those up on the internet and look at the doors, because that's where it all came from. They use seatbelt straps, essentially just to pull the windows up because they had no regulator. But that's how you do it. And it's real simple if you actually have like a coupe where, everything rides in the door channel. If you got, let's say it's a GM G body, you're sucking, man. You're just going to have to pop rivet that sucker to the door and hope it stays there.
You know what? I'll make a video that when I bring when I get Plan Z in here, because Plan Z is the next one on the chopping block. I actually have an engine over here I'm building for it. It actually has those in it. Now I'll show how it's done. I've done it on a few of my darts before. I just didn't want to do it on this. I just like the I like the nostalgia rolling up a window. I think that's kind of cool.
My windows don't move, and I blocked them into place so they can't move up and down.
And
I just didn't like. That's extra weight, man. I don't need it. I mean, it's nice to roll down the window, but you're talking 20 seconds longer in the car. It's not that big of a deal. If Cujo was outside trying to eat me, I would die.
Yeah, right.
Let's see. 38 Racing says, is what you're saying is that you can reuse DLC lifters?
100%. Yes, that's the whole idea of it. It's not a one and done. Obviously, you're gonna, if you ever run out of oil, if you have an oil starvation problem, you're gonna have issues. You don't want steel hitting steel, but as long as you have the hydraulic wedge, they will last. We've ran them on a few different profiles, the exact same lifters.
Miss Catchy asks, many VRSs at No Name Nationals.
Yes.
Well, it's ironic that you asked that. There was probably more VRSs on the property than have been sold in the past month.
No, I got to tell you, a lot of these guys on the YouTube, especially a lot of people in this chat right now, they've been credited to some of our sales. So it's actually been selling a lot more. It's been doing really well because people have been showing that it actually works, like side-by-side channel. Like you take this carburetor off, put this carburetor on, it makes more power. And it's not like a few horsepower. It's a lot more. It's not like 10. It's like 15 or 20 horsepower, which is about right.
Substantial.
Substantial. That's
Like
a real number.
if you think about 20 horsepower, right? 20 horsepower to the person that just got their first small block Chevy is not really much.
Hmm.
But 20 horsepower to a NASCAR team wins the race,
Big deal.
right?
Yep.
They spend billions getting 20 horsepower.
Yeah.
Okay. Fab Race Bond Repeat says, I think a class like that can help rebuild the sport of drag racing. Cool, man. That's kind of what we were looking at, was something that was relatively cheap, affordable,
Yep.
and fun.
We thought the same thing too. That was the whole idea too, is that we thought that something like this would be really fun for everyone.
Yeah. Let's see. Any Motorsports Garage, we had the VRS Nationals. It was actually called that multiple times during the No Name Nationals.
Yeah, Tony's Hot Rod Garage all the way out there from Prescott.
Yeah.
He had a VRS on his too.
Yeah. Oh, he's not in Phoenix, he's in Prescott. That's right.
Yeah.
Junkyard D, how much D-stroke can you get out of an offset crank grind? It all depends on how small of a journal you're willing to go. The smallest rod journals I'm aware of are off of an Acura, like 1.85 inch.
Yep.
Right. And so let's say yours is a 2-inch and you're going to offset grind it and you're going to go to a 1.85 inch, right? You're only looking at 0.15 inch. So 150 thousandths offset ground is the best you can do. And that's if your surface is good on the crank to begin with. Because if the surface is not good, you're going to have to turn it down 10 and then go offset ground.
Yeah.
And so you're going to lose some of that stroke. But let's say you pull 150 thousandths out of let's say a 350 Chevy is what? That most makes it easy. Ford 351 Windsor, 3.5 inch stroke. Okay. You pull 150 thousandths out of that. You're now down to a 3.45 stroke.
Mm-hmm.
That makes an engine. It went from 351 cubic inches to 345 cubic inches. Roughly.
Well, 150 from 3.5 would be 3.35.
3.35. You're right. Yeah, I screwed up the math on that. Math and company.
Yeah.
Great.
So 150,000 will put you close. So to this thing. So yeah, it can be done.
Right. And that's why we were saying it's real easy. Like the guys that were saying, hey, we got a 350 Chevy. Well, no problem. Go offset, because a 350 Chevy has a 2.1 inch rod journal. Okay. You offset grind that thing and take it down to an Acura size, or even just let's just say a small journal Chevrolet small block, 2-inch. Okay. You take it down to a 2-inch, you pulled what?
100 thousandths
off of it. So you've now decreased the stroke by 100 thousandths. So now you're down at 3.38. Right. So there's a lot of ways to do this, and it's not all that crazy expensive.
No. There's a lot of companies do this. Ohio Crankshaft
specializes in stuff like this. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And we trust them. I trust them. When I was at Crowler and in Lunati, they do a lot of work for us. So
when you de-stroke a crankshaft, okay, it does not change the overlap on the crank really. It's when you stroke it and it moves the center line of the rod journal out from the center line of the main journal is where the overlap goes away and they get weak. When you de-stroke it, it doesn't move inward, but say it's here, that diameter just gets smaller and it still is kind of the same spot.
Yeah.
Right. So you don't lose a lot. Technically, it probably would make it weaker, but the less stroke that you have, the less leverage it has on the crank. So I don't know. I would assume it probably balances out somehow.
Yeah.
Let's see. Nick the Van Man says, if funds allow, I'd like to do a 300 Buick or 330 Olds Power G-body wagon for that class. Race my van and bracket. Wagon is the class y'all are brainstorming. Wagon in that class. It would be fun. And that's the whole point. Is like you could get a myriad of different cars in there with a 3,000-pound weight limit. I mean, gosh, you could pretty much put any car ever made in that dang thing. So,
and that's the key word. The very last word was fun. That was the whole thing. Is I wanted it to be fun again. Yeah, I was, there was many times where I was talking with Dallas, before the No Name Nationals in 2010 50. Like, my kid loves my car, and it's like, I mean, if you ever been in his room, my car's got plastered all over those walls, and that's no Dallas was there, he saw it. So, like, the last thing I want to do is go out there and be a first round duck. My kid sees my car just get annihilated by somebody. So I wanted to make sure that I was gonna he'd see the car race and have some fun with it. This way, he'll see it race a lot and be really close racing, and it would be fun for him to see that too. I think it would just be awesome, personally.
Here's Tony saying that he ran his personal best with the VRS too.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I remember him telling me that. Oh, Tony, by the way, those chilies were awesome, man. I cut them. We put stuff. Oh man, there were some of them we cut, we grilled, we pureed them. We made a chili dip with them. Oh man, they were amazing. Thank you very much for that. In fact, we just had that this last weekend. They were awesome. Thank you very much.
Clayton's Toolbox is saying for the 333, maybe it would be good to limit the age of the engines to pre-1990. Keep the new stuff from outperforming the old stuff. I don't know. We talked about it, but see, here's the problem. You can go get a freaking 6-liter LS in the junkyard for like half the price of a dang 351 Windsor now.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, the newer engines do outperform, but man, we're trying to keep the cost down. So you're just going to have to deal with them.
Yeah. And here's the thing too, is that if you're going to rent LS, you have to run a GM car. Not everybody wants to run a GM car. They can't just put a GM engine into your Fox body or an LS into my Dart or whatever. You got to run that what it is. And you're going to have to there's going to be some workarounds on an LS. It's not just because people run the LSs are great for boosted. LS's NA aren't the greatest. It's a wedge head. It's a cathedral port wedge head. They don't like the flow, that air. They work well with boost because the architecture is there. Same with the Gen 3 Hemi. They love the boost also.
You know what? That's one thing that we should probably bring up in this 333 we were talking about. It's got to be gasoline, right? Gasoline.
Yes. Yeah,
So
exactly.
methanol,
Gasoline,
right?
No methanol, no E85, none of that stuff. I wrote that down and totally forgot to say that. Yeah, gasoline. It's got to be like 110 or pump gas or whatever you want to run, but it can't be like methanol. It can't be E85. It can't be anything like that.
All right, 38 Racing says, how much will offset grinding weaken the crank? If you offset grind it and make the stroke more, it will weaken the crank, right?
Mm-hmm.
It will get considerably weaker. I don't know by how much, because you start losing your overlap when you do that.
Yeah,
because you're cutting it on the side that is your overlap, that strength through the crank.
When you de-stroke it, though, the bottom part of the crankshaft is not changing because you're taking the top part of the crank and bringing it down when you bring the diameter smaller. So the bottom of the crank that's closer to the end is basically you're just bringing this top part down. So the overlap stays identically the same. You're just bringing the top part down. So it doesn't make it any weaker. The only part of it that will make it weaker is that if you cut through some of the hardness. So some of them are going to have to be renitrided, some of that. But you can. I wouldn't really look at this part of it. Look at what you can do for cost effective. That's why we brought up all these different engines, so you wouldn't have to think about making the cost out of control for people, because offset grinding a crank is not inexpensive. I'm just letting you know that it is not an inexpensive thing. It's very expensive. So
I don't know.
Look at other ways to make this.
Okay. Offset grinding a crank is not that expensive. If you take a crank and have it turned, okay, and they take 10 thousandths off, it's the same price if they take 10 thousandths off or 110 thousandths off. Now,
not true, though.
They got to put it in. They actually have to recenter the crank in the lathe, and they center on the rod journal to cut it like that, right?
But to cut 10 thousandths or 110 thousandths, it's a time thing. So like when I was at Crower, if you just cut the cranks for 1010, it was like $20 a journal. When you offset ground it, it was like $100 a journal because of how long it takes.
Really?
Yeah, because
I think that's all centering the machine, because you got to do it for each throw. You have to set the machine up for each throw. So you got like an hour of rework just for each throw.
Yeah, and then
Well,
because
there's only 4 throws, so on a V8.
yes, but the thing is those that when you're offset grinding it, it's cut, no cut, cut,
Right.
no cut, cut, no cut. So you can't take off like 10 thousandths at a time. You're taking a thou with every
Right.
rotation. It's
Yeah.
got to go all the way across. Then you got to come back. So it just takes a long time because you can't put heat into it. When you're doing when you're cutting, say, down the journal, that's like, say you're taking 10 thousandths off. It's an even cut all the way around. So you're not loading the wheel because it's an actual stone wheel. So you have to be very careful on how much you cut off. So it's extremely takes a
Well, it
long time.
also cuts twice as fast if you're cutting in a circle,
That's right.
right?
Exactly. Yep.
So when you're cutting in an off-centered circle and it doesn't cut in a certain area,
That's right.
and you can only take a thousandth at a time, it takes forever on that backside.
That's right. Exactly. Because you don't want to shock it because literally it's an actual stone. And then you're going to use 3 different types of stone to cut it. So it just takes a while. That's all it does. It just takes a while.
So Nick the Van Man says he bought a quick fuel 650 double pumper 4150 brawler with electric choke. Now y'all are making me think I should have bought a VRS 650. Let's see here. Okay. Dead Pedal Motors just got here. I'm catching up. I'm behind. Let's see. Nick the Van Man says tight competitive races in the 9 or 10 second 8th mile are far more fun than getting blown out of the group by block slingshot because we are all in sportsmen. Yeah, that I took the Suburban out there and gave him hell. I still got the number written on the window. It's 1188. Deep. Real deep.
That was so funny. I just laughed at that when I saw it. That was funny. Yeah.
Clayton's Toolbox says the Coyote engine might be the one that'd be hard to beat in 333. No, because
Carbureted.
it's a carburetor.
It's got to be carbureted. That's the whole thing. That was the level playing field. And we were talking about having push rods, but maybe not. I don't know. But everything so far right now that we're talking about has got push rods. So
let's see. 333 is the cubic inch limit. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm trying to catch up too. I'm not sure where I was at.
Okay. So Dead Pedal Motors and current Coyotes have proven to be the cheap power building motors. Stock Gen 1 bottom ends are good for 700 horsepower.
Mm-hmm.
They are. The problem with I don't think you'll ever get a Coyote to be in like the 333 class ever because it's got computer controlled everything. Mm-hmm. And the whole idea was to have a carburetor to keep costs down. It wasn't EFI to death because if you look at it, if you keep it at carburetors and then somebody, let's say we let one person run it with EFI. Okay, if you got a Coyote, you can run EFI. Well, they find out EFI is the ticket. Guess what everybody has the next week?
EFI.
Right?
And that's why we just make it carburetors
for the regular guy. Mm-hmm. But if you just say carburetors, well, you know what? Throw Q-Jet on that sucker. Throw whatever you got on it. It'll be fine. It may not be the fastest thing in town, but it'll get you 90% there.
Yeah. But I'm still thinking that maybe a push rod might be the thing. It's got to have a push rod in it. That way it eliminates all that nonsense.
Well, I don't know it. Because you can go get a 331 5.4 liter Ford at the junkyard for relatively cheap and put a carburetor on it.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, but they're capable of handling a lot of horsepower too, but under boosted applications. Naturally aspirated. I don't think I've ever seen one that's 1,000 horse. No. It could be.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. There you go. That's how deep the Suburban was.
That's exactly what it said, just like that.
38 Racing's 283, 302, 327 Chevy would be a good choice. Yes, probably.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's got a better oiling system out of all of them.
And you can carb a Coyote. They sell intakes. I don't think they have anything that can control the cams, though. Yes, the deep strategy almost did cut me a perfect. Like I was 9. All right, I was 9/10,000ths away from a perfect light. Most places only have 3 digits for the reaction time, so it'll be like a 0.001. Well, in this case, it would have been 0.000, right? But I was 0.0009 lead, which I've never heard of a 4-digit reaction time, but I guess there is such a thing, and I got lucky on that light. Really, I did. Let's see. Tall Garage says, guess the carb thing. I don't know dirt about carbs. I don't know. It's limiting. All right. Yeah, there you go. The max effort 318 for the win.
That's what I'm going to try to do. I mean, I'll tell you what I'm going to try to do. 318, 4-inch bore, steel crank, style rod that I can get so I can make a lightweight piston and call it good. That's what I'm going to try to do. Run these heads in this intake, because that means that all this exhaust, everything that's already in here works. And these heads are the 18-degree valves, so it's legal. I can't run our Victor ones because they're 15 degrees, so I'd have to run these. But it's going to work, and a 4-inch bore will allow this thing to breathe. And I'm just going to RPM the crap out of it. Have fun.
Rapid Transit Garage says, got to admit, the 333 is an exciting idea. Yes. So 333 class, matching body and powertrain brands. That's correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So if you got a Chevrolet engine, you need to have a Chevrolet car.
Yeah. That's the
LS. You need to have a GM car.
And that was the whole idea to it. So that way it just made it more fun. Man, it already flew by. It's now almost 9 o'clock.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, last 30 minutes went by fast.
Yeah. So Tony's just did the math on your 318 with a 4-inch bore.
That's right, suckers. And then also too, do a 4.030 with a Chevrolet 327 crank. Comes out to 333 point something, and that's still within the 333. So yeah, everybody's happy. And I did that so that way a guy with a 350 Chevy could bore 30 over and still compete. So that's why we came up with that number.
So there's these questions starting to come up. So no Buick and a Chevy, or 38 Racing St. Pontiac with a small block Chevy. I don't see why you can't, because I mean they came from the factory majority of that way.
But if you allow that, then it's going to be an LS into a Pontiac then, and it's going to be
sure. But I mean it's a GM engine. That's kind of the same thing.
I say Pontiac. I say Chevrolet. That's the way I see it.
What would be cool is if you said if it was a Chevrolet, it has to run as a Chevy engine. But if it's a Pontiac, it could run a Chevrolet or a Pontiac. I think that would be cool. Just to be honest with you, because the reality of it is most of that stuff, like, okay, you talking about G bodies, the engine options for G body, 305 Chevy, 307 Oldsmobile, 401 Oldsmobile, diesel Oldsmobile, Buick 350, Buick V6, Buick Turbo V6. I mean, it's like all the G bodies had the same engine combinations. You could order them. It wasn't brand specific at that point. They were kind of spread across the board. And I think that's what was different between Mopar and Ford and then GM. GM was so big, they all had their own engines, their own transmissions, their own rear ends. And then it got amalgamated in like 1972, whenever that lawsuit thing was. Do you remember that? Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah.
It was the Oldsmobiles with the Chevrolet engines in them. It's where everybody got sued. But
so there's the next question, Junkyard D. I'm actually going to grab a picture here real quick. He was asking about that, and I gotta find it real quick. And I actually just posted this in my memories. Yeah, give me a second right here. So this is actually what I'm going to do. So you are absolutely correct. But here's how you fix that. You see that's looking in the hole of this actual block that's in this car. In 2016, that's how far the concrete is in that block, and that's the port for the water. It is literally at the bottom of the water port. So that is 1 inch, 250 thousandths from the deck is how high that concrete is. So yes, it would make it. It would be right at the limit, but you put that much concrete in it, it's going to stabilize the board. The whole idea for a thin board is it's going to start to vibrate and your rings won't
Crack.
seal. You put that concrete in, it stabilizes it. It's totally fine.
Yeah. Danny Boyd says the first FE engine along with the last Y block were 332 cubic inches.
There you go.
This is exactly why we picked this cubic inch limit.
That's right.
Right? Was because every manufacturer, we were talking about this on the phone, like, my God, everybody makes a 330 something cubic inch engine.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like a 327 Chevy, it's freaking 30 over bore, and you're there.
Yeah.
So,
And that, like I said, this wasn't just we just picked this out of the air. We started going through engine combinations, and when doing the math, like, would this work? Would this work? Would this work? And that's why the 333 just seemed to work.
yeah. Yep. So, and Buick Smith is saying no Buick Olds 215 or Rover, correct? That's correct. You cannot use an aluminum block. And we're not doing that to be dicks. We're doing that because you could literally make a 333 cubic inch Buick or Olds 215 motor. You can make them that big. And the problem is that engine would weigh 300 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
There's no one can compete with that. Right? I mean, it doesn't matter. I don't care how much horsepower Chevrolet has on that combination. They could not. The Chevrolet already starts off 150 pounds more than a Buick 350.
Mm-hmm.
You throw 300 pounds difference at it, it can't. I mean, think about that. That's 0.3 of a second. That's like what in horsepower numbers? Be almost 50 horse. So,
Patrick's asking me, but Shane, will that make it to Lambert's? Absolutely. I've been running concrete in my 360s just like that for years. When they were the stock stroke, I would run them a half an inch below the water on that, and it would never get hot. The oil would get hot, so you have to run an oil cooler if you're going to drive it on the street. But the coolant really wouldn't get hot, but the oil would get really hot. In fact, sometimes I would have to switch to synthetics because that oil would get really hot, like well over 200 degrees. But yeah, it'll be fine. Just going to Lambert's, 100% be fine.
Tony Sauer Garage says, "Oh hell yeah, 332 FE, that would be badass."
Yeah.
38 Racing said, "Will the Class be CC'd? The engines will be pumped. I have a PNG, and we'll pump every single one of them. Make sure everybody's legal."
Mm-hmm.
Danny Boyd says, "Buick had 340, but Chevy 327, Old 330, and Pontiac 326. And Buick had a 300 also."
Mm-hmm.
So I can easily just make a 333 cubic inch Buick 300.
Yeah, and Chrysler's 318. So I mean, you're starting way back there too, but you can just overbore it,
Yeah, and that's what I do is I take a Buick 300 block and bore it out to a 3875 bore for like a 283 Chevy, right? And then with the 3.4 inch stroke, it comes out to almost 333 cubes. So, Unity Motorsports Garage is talking to Tony like some high riser or tunnel ports on a 332 FE. I wonder if it has ever been done.
Sounds like a video.
And Danny Boyd saying that the 332 FE had a 4-inch bore.
Look, perfect. Well, there you go.
Mostly old parts and rust. So any block with a stock part number, any factory part number block, you're going to be able to use pretty much as long as it's a wet sump block.
Yeah, and like not an R block, but like they did make, like, I think I know what he's talking about. They did put X blocks in a lot of the Dusters. So if that's what you're talking about, yes. But like an R3 block, no, because an R3 block never really came in anything. But the X's came in like the TAs and stuff like that. So yeah, I think that's what he's alluding to.
Yeah, but all right, well, that's it for tonight. That was literally 2 hours. It flew by. Once you guys got really engaged with this 333 class, and just think it over, just mull it over, come up with some good comments. Let us know if we're way off our rocker. We don't even need to be doing this, and we'll see you guys next Wednesday.
Yeah.
You can give us the download on what you got for it. So I'm thinking that really make sure Friday you're over on John Wilburn's channel. If John Wilburn's going to have a video, I haven't even seen him in here tonight, so he may be already crashed out for the evening.
But like always, he's definitely going to have one. So go and see John Wilburn, 7 o'clock Central on John Wilburn. Just the Bring of the No Name Nationals. Go check them out. Yeah. So
all right, but we'll see you next week. So
you guys take it easy. All right. Have a good night.